The Indomitable's reactor was screaming. Engineer Doyen Lee watched the temperature readings climb past every safety threshold. The reactor was running at 140% capacity, far beyond what the designers had intended. Red warning lights covered his engineering console like a Christmas tree. "Captain, if we push any harder, we risk a core breach," he reported, trying to keep his voice steady. "Can you hold it together?" Captain Jinho Park asked from the bridge. Doyen looked at the reactor core through the reinforced window. It was glowing white-hot, held together by magnetic containment fields and prayers. "Yes, sir. I can hold it together with duct tape and hope if I have to." "Then do it. We are not backing down." The Devourers had committed everything to destroying the human ship. 200 vessels now surrounded the Indomitable, forming a sphere of death. They had learned from their losses. They no longer clumped together where nuclear missiles could hit multiple targets. They spread out, attacking from every angle, giving the humans no safe direction to fire. Commander Sun Hee Han's tactical display was completely red. Threats from every vector. Her hands moved across the controls, designating targets as fast as she could, but there were too many. "We cannot hold this position much longer." A plasma bolt hit the starboard side. Another hull breach, then another. The ship shuddered under the impacts. Atmosphere vented from decks 15 and 16 before emergency systems could seal them. Crew members were evacuating the damaged sections, but some did not make it. The casualty reports were climbing. "Railgun 2 is offline," Pilot Yunishin reported. "Missile tubes 3 and 7 destroyed. We have lost 40% of our offensive capability." Jinho gripped his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew worked with desperate efficiency. They were doing the impossible, but even the impossible had limits. The Indomitable was one ship. The enemy had 200. Simple mathematics meant they were going to lose. Then Sun Hee's console beeped with an incoming signal. She looked at it, and her eyes went wide. "Captain, new contacts! Multiple human ships emerging from faster-than-light travel." On the main view screen, 11 ships appeared in brilliant flashes of light. They were smaller than the Indomitable, but they bore the same blocky, practical design, the same thick armor, the same railgun turrets and missile tubes. Earth's entire defense fleet had arrived. Leading them was the Defiant, commanded by Captain Bowman Yang. His voice came through the communication channel, calm and professional. "Indomitable, this is Defiant. Sorry we are late to the party. Earth Command sends their regards." Relief washed through Jinho like cold water. "Defiant, very glad to see you. The Devourers have adapted to energy weapons, but kinetic weapons still work. Nuclear missiles disrupt their hive mind communications." "Understood," Bowman replied. "All ships, you heard the man. Weapons free. Show these things how Earth fights." 12 human warships opened fire simultaneously. Tungsten rods flew from 40 railgun turrets. Nuclear missiles launched from 100 tubes. The Devourers, focused entirely on destroying the Indomitable, suddenly found themselves under attack from every direction. The coordinated human assault was devastating, while the Indomitable had been fighting alone, barely surviving. 12 ships working together created overlapping fields of fire that left the Devourers no safe position. They tried to adapt, tried to spread out further, but the humans had learned from the first engagement too. Captain Bowman implemented something he called shotgun protocol. Instead of firing single railgun rounds, the human ships began firing thousands of small ball bearings at hypersonic speeds. The bearings were tiny, just 1 centimeter in diameter, but traveling at thousands of kilometers per second, they became deadly shrapnel. The Devourers had learned to avoid large projectiles. They could not avoid clouds of hypersonic ball bearings. Ships that tried to maneuver through the shrapnel fields were torn apart, their hulls punctured hundreds of times in seconds. "This is more like it," Doyen said, watching the enemy ships die. He was using the brief respite to patch the worst damage to the Indomitable. His engineering teams were performing miracles with welding torches, emergency sealant, and pure determination. Dr. Jaewon Nam contacted the bridge with new information. "Captain, I have analyzed the Devourer hive mind network. It operates on distributed bioelectric frequencies. If we could hit them with a strong electromagnetic pulse, we could sever the connections entirely. How strong? Jinho asked. Stronger than our nuclear weapons produce. We would need a dedicated EMP device. Yuna Shin spoke up. Captain, our fighters have EMP generators for disabling enemy electronics, if we modified them according to Dr. Nam's specifications. Do it, Jinho ordered. Yuna, take a squadron and coordinate with Dr. Nam. Sunhee, give them fighter cover. 12 human fighter craft launched from the Indomitable and Defiant. They were small, fast, and carried pilots who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Yuna led them into the chaos of the battlefield, dodging plasma fire and debris. Dr. Nam had sent the modifications to their onboard computers. The pilots implemented them on the fly, adjusting their EMP generators to match the Devourer's bioelectric frequency. It was dangerous work, requiring them to fly deep into enemy formations. Blue Squadron, follow me, Yuna called out. We go in fast, deploy EMPs, and get out faster. The fighters screamed through the Devourer swarm. Enemy ships turned to intercept, but the small craft were too quick and too agile. The pilots pushed their machines to the limit, performing maneuvers that would have killed anyone with slower reflexes. Yuna reached the center of the swarm and activated her modified EMP. The pulse spread outward in an invisible wave. Everywhere it touched, Devourer ships went dark. Their connection to the hive mind severed instantly. The ships began drifting, their coordination lost, unable to function as individuals. The other 11 fighters deployed their EMPs throughout the swarm. Large sections of the Devourer fleet went offline simultaneously. It was like watching puppet strings get cut. Ships that had been moving with perfect precision suddenly became helpless targets. The human warships did not waste the opportunity. Railguns and missiles tore through the disabled vessels. Captain Bowman coordinated the fleet's fire, ensuring no shot was wasted. Every tungsten rod hit home. Every nuclear warhead found its target. Confirmed kills now at 183, Sunhee reported, and there was fierce satisfaction in her voice. The swarm is breaking apart. The Devourers finally did what should have been unthinkable for a hive species. They retreated. The surviving ships turned away from Axiom Prime and accelerated toward deep space. They had come expecting to consume another civilization. Instead, they had met something they could not adapt to fast enough. Humanity's refusal to evolve past primitive weapons had become their greatest advantage. As the enemy fled, the human fleet held position. They did not pursue. They were battered and exhausted. 2 ships had been destroyed in the battle, their crews lost. But they had won. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Jinho finally allowed himself to sit down. His legs were shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. Around him, his crew began to relax. Some were crying. Others were laughing with relief. Doyen Lee slumped over his console, the reactor finally stabilizing back to safe levels. Casualties? Jinho asked quietly. 23 dead across the fleet, Sunhee replied, her voice heavy. 47 wounded. The Indomitable lost 11 crew members. 11 people who would never go home. 11 people who had given everything to protect billions of strangers who had mocked them days before. Jinho felt the weight of every loss. They will be remembered, he said. All of them. Captain Bowman's face appeared on the view screen. He looked as exhausted as Jinho felt. Indomitable, you held them off alone for 90 minutes. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. We did what we had to, Jinho replied. Thank you for coming. Thank Earth Command. They sent everyone when they saw what was happening. We were not going to let you fight alone. A new communication channel opened. It was Admiral Mireille Choi from Axiom Prime. Her voice was thick with emotion. All human ships, the Galactic Council extends its deepest gratitude. You saved countless lives today. You proved that we were wrong about you. Very, very wrong. Jinho looked at his damaged ship, his exhausted crew, and thought about the 11 people who would not see Earth again. Tell the Council we will discuss our classification when we return. But right now we have repairs to make and dead to honor. Understood, Captain. Axiom Prime out. The 12 human ships turned toward the station, limping home with their battle scars visible but their spirits unbroken. Behind them, the remains of 183 Devourer ships drifted in the darkness, and far away, the surviving swarm fled deeper into space, carrying a new memory with them. A memory of metal rods and nuclear fire. A memory of the species that threw rocks and won. The first railgun shot left the Indomitable at 3,000 kilometers per second. A solid tungsten rod, 30 centimeters long and 10 centimeters wide, weighing exactly 50 kilograms. It had no guidance system, no warhead, no complex technology, just mass and velocity. It hit a Devourer ship dead center. The organic hull that had absorbed plasma and antimatter could not absorb physics. The tungsten rod punched through the front of the ship, traveled through the entire length of its interior, and exited out the back. The kinetic energy transfer was catastrophic. The Devourer vessel split in half, its biomechanical components torn apart by the sheer force of impact. Target destroyed, Commander Sun Hee Han reported, surprise clear in her voice. One shot, one kill. Captain Jin-Ho Park allowed himself a small smile. Fire all railguns. Continuous barrage. 6 railgun turrets opened up simultaneously. Tungsten rods screamed through space at relativistic speeds. Each shot represented centuries-old technology, the same basic principle humans had used since they invented the bow and arrow. Throw something hard at your enemy, make it go fast. Hit them where it hurts. The Devourers tried to adapt. Their hulls shifted and changed, attempting to create the same absorption effect that had worked against energy weapons. But you cannot absorb a solid object traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. You can only be destroyed by it. 7 Devourer ships exploded in the first minute. Then 12 more. The swarm began to change formation, spreading out to avoid the concentrated fire. They returned fire with their own weapons, but the Indomitable's thick armor absorbed most of the damage. What the Carthians had mocked as primitive and bulky now proved its worth. The ship shook from impacts, but its hull held. Missile tubes 1 through 8 prepare nuclear warheads, Jin-Ho ordered. Tactical. I need firing solutions on clusters of enemy ships. Captain, we have not used nuclear weapons in space combat for 200 years, Pilot Yuna Shin said. Are you sure they will work? They worked just fine against our own ships in training exercises, Engineer Doyen Lee said from his station. He was rerouting power from non-essential systems to weapons and shields. The galaxy stopped using them because they are messy and old-fashioned. But messy and old-fashioned might be exactly what we need. Sun Hee highlighted 6 clusters of Devourer ships on the tactical display. Firing solutions locked. Range is optimal for maximum blast effect. Fire, Jin-Ho said. 8 missiles launched from the Indomitable's tubes. They were not fast or sophisticated. Modern point defense systems could easily shoot them down, but the Devourers had never encountered nuclear missiles before. They ignored the incoming projectiles, focused instead on the railgun fire that was still tearing through their ranks. The missiles reached their targets and detonated. Nuclear fire bloomed in the darkness of space. 8 miniature suns appeared among the Devourer swarm. The electromagnetic pulses from the explosions washed over dozens of ships, and something unexpected happened. The bioelectrical systems that coordinated the Devourer hive mind went haywire. Ships that had been moving in perfect synchronization suddenly began drifting aimlessly, their connection to the collective mind severed. The radiation is disrupting their communications. Dr. Jaewon Nam's voice came through from the medical bay. The doctor had been monitoring the enemy's biological responses. The Devourers are a hive species. They share information instantly through bioelectric signals. Our nuclear weapons are jamming those signals. Then we keep hitting them, Jin-Ho said. All missile tubes reload with nuclear warheads. Gunnery, target the confused ships first. The Indomitable pressed its attack. Railguns hammered the disoriented Devourer vessels, while missiles created more zones of radiation that scrambled their coordination. It was brutal, direct, and effective. Everything the Galactic Council had said would not work was working perfectly. Doyen Lee modified torpedo payloads in real time, adding thermite compounds that burned at extreme temperatures and depleted uranium penetrators that could punch through even the adapted Devourer hulls. The engineer was improvising with every shot, treating the battle like a laboratory experiment. Adding white phosphorus to Warhead 17, he called out cheerfully. Let us see how they like that. The torpedo hit a Devourer command ship. The white phosphorus ignited and burned through the organic material like acid through paper. The ship tried to heal itself, but the chemical reaction was too fast and too hot. It died thrashing in space, unable to adapt to something as simple as fire. But the Devourers were learning. Not quickly enough to save the ships already destroyed, but learning nonetheless. They began to avoid the nuclear blast zones. They spread out further to minimize railgun effectiveness. They started targeting the Indomitable's weapon system specifically. A plasma bolt hit the number 3 railgun turret. The gun went offline, its barrel twisted and melted. Another shot struck the port side, creating a hull breach on Deck 7. Atmosphere vented into space before emergency bulkheads sealed the section. Hull breaches on Decks 7 through 12, Sun He reported. We have lost Railgun 3 and Missile Tube 5. Shields at 40%. How many have we destroyed? Jinho asked. 47 confirmed kills, she replied. But they are adapting, Captain. They are learning to fight us. The Devourers changed tactics again. Instead of using energy weapons, they began launching boarding pods at the Indomitable. Organic projectiles that attached to the hull and burned through the metal, releasing assimilation organisms that would consume the ship from the inside. Boarders, Jinho said calmly. He pressed the ship-wide alert. Gunnery Sergeant Mina Kang, you are cleared to repel boarders. Mina Kang had been waiting for this moment. The Marine commander led 50 soldiers armed with flamethrowers, explosive charges, and good old-fashioned rifles. The Devourers had never faced this kind of defense either. The first boarding organisms broke through into Deck 9. They were insect-like creatures with multiple limbs and acidic secretions. They moved fast, trying to spread through the ship. They ran straight into Mina's Marines. Flamethrowers turned the corridor into an inferno. The organisms screamed and burned. Those that escaped the fire were shot down with armor-piercing rounds. When more tried to break through in engineering, Doyen Lee personally opened the exterior airlock. Explosive decompression sucked the boarders out into space. Boarding repelled on all decks, Mina reported. We lost 3 Marines, but we held them. The battle had been raging for 90 minutes. The Indomitable was battered and scarred. Its hull was pockmarked with damage. Fires burned in 3 sections. The reactor was operating at dangerous levels, pushed far beyond its safety limits, but it was still fighting. The Devourer swarm had been reduced from 400 ships to 320. They had lost 80 vessels to humanity's primitive weapons. Ships that had survived Carthian plasma and antimatter had been destroyed by metal rods and nuclear fire. In the council chambers of Axiom Prime, absolute silence reigned. Species that had witnessed the death of their own fleets watched as a single human ship accomplished what they could not. The mockery and laughter from days before seemed like ancient history. Ambassador Hyan stood with tears streaming down his face, proud beyond words. Admiral Mirai Choi stood beside him, her expression fierce and vindicated. Vex Thor watched the display in disbelief. How? He whispered. How are they doing this? An elderly counselor, one who had abstained from the non-combat species vote, answered him. Because they fight like they have nothing to lose and everything to prove. And because we were fools to dismiss them. On the Indomitable's bridge, alarms were blaring. The ship could not sustain this level of combat much longer. But Jinho looked at his crew and saw no fear. Only determination. Keep firing, he ordered. We are not done yet. The alert came at dawn. Station time. Red lights flashed throughout Axiom Prime as emergency sirens wailed through every corridor. Captain Jinho Park was already awake, standing on the bridge of the Indomitable, when the call came through from Council Central Command. All vessels, this is Axiom Control. We have confirmed hostile contact. Unknown fleet detected 300 ships, classification Devourer. All combat-capable vessels report to defensive positions immediately. Commander Sun Hee-han looked up from her tactical station, her dark eyes reflecting the red warning lights. Captain, the Carthian fleet is moving to intercept. 75 ships, full battle formation. Jinho nodded, watching the display screen as green dots representing the Carthian fleet moved toward the edge of the system. The red dots indicating the Devourer swarm outnumbered them 4-1. He had read the classified reports about the Devourers during the long night. A species that consumed entire civilizations, absorbing their technology and turning it against them. 17 known cultures had been wiped out completely. The galaxy had thought them gone, driven away decades ago. They look confident, said Engineer Doyen Lee, who had come to the bridge despite the early hour. He was chewing on a protein bar, his uniform rumpled from sleeping in his quarters. "The Carthians always look confident," Sun He replied. "They have not lost a major engagement in 300 years." On the view screen they could see Vexthor's face appear in the Council's broadcast channel. The Carthian commander looked calm and composed. "This will be over quickly. The Devourers made a mistake coming here. We will remind them why the Carthian Empire is the premier military power in the galaxy." The connection cut off. The Carthian fleet accelerated toward the enemy. Jinho and his crew watched the battle unfold on their sensors. They were too far away to participate, not that anyone had asked them to. The non-combat species classification meant they were supposed to stay back and let the real warriors handle the threat. The Carthian ships opened fire first. Their plasma cannons lit up space with brilliant purple and white streams of energy. The weapons were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Dozens of Devourer ships exploded in the initial volley, their organic-looking hulls unable to withstand the concentrated plasma fire. "Effective," Sun He noted, marking each destroyed enemy vessel on her tactical display. "They are taking them apart." For 15 minutes, it looked like Vexthor had been right. The Carthian fleet moved in perfect formation, their shields absorbing. The few return shots that came from the Devourer swarm. Another 20 enemy ships were destroyed, then 30. The Devourers seemed helpless against the superior technology. Then something changed. Pilot Yuna Shin noticed it first. She was young, but had the best eyes on the ship. "Captain, the Devourer hull composition is changing. Look at Sector 7. Jinho zoomed in on the display. The Devourer ship's surfaces were shifting, transforming from dull gray to something that looked almost crystalline. When the next plasma barrage hit them, the energy did not penetrate. Instead, it was absorbed into the hulls. "What are they doing?" Doyun asked. "Adapting," Sun He said quietly, her voice filled with concern. "They are learning." The Devourers fired back, but instead of their previous weak weapons, they used the Carthians' own plasma energy. The absorbed power was redirected through new openings in their hulls, concentrated and amplified. Purple streams of death cut through space. A Carthian destroyer took a direct hit. Its shields flickered and failed. The ship broke apart in a silent explosion that lit up the darkness. "No," Yuna whispered. The Carthian formation broke apart as panic spread through their fleet. They tried to adapt their tactics, switching to antimatter torpedoes. Those worked for a few minutes until the Devourers learned to absorb that energy too. Then graviton beams. Same result. Everything the Carthians threw at the enemy was consumed, studied, and turned back against them with greater force. Ships began dying by the dozens. The proud Carthian fleet, which had looked unstoppable 15 minutes ago, was being torn to pieces. Vexthor's voice came through the emergency channel, no longer calm and confident. "Fall back, all ships, fall back to Axiom Prime. We need reinforcements." But there was no time for retreat. The Devourers had learned the Carthian speed, too. They matched it, then exceeded it. The swarm surrounded the fleet and began methodically destroying every ship. Jinho watched in silence as the green dots on his screen disappeared one by one. Beside each dot was a number indicating crew count. That destroyer held 400 beings. That cruiser had 2,000. All gone in flashes of light and debris. When it was over, only 12 Carthian ships escaped. 63 were destroyed. The Devourer swarm had grown larger too, consuming the wreckage and technology from the battlefield. Sensors now showed 400 Devourer vessels, not 300. They had built more ships from the remains of their victims. The Council's emergency channel exploded with panicked voices. Species that had seemed so superior and confident hours ago now screamed for help. Someone was crying. Someone else was praying in a language the translation software could not recognize. "All vessels." Admiral Mireille Choi's voice cut through the chaos. She was speaking from the council chambers. "All available ships, regardless of classification, are requested to assist in the defense of Axiom Prime. This is a threat-level extinction event. They are asking us," Doyen said, disbelief in his voice. "The non-combat species is being asked to fight." Jinho stood up from his captain's chair. Navigation. Plot a course to intercept the Devourer swarm. Engineering. I want all weapons armed and ready. Tactical. Begin analysis of Devourer combat patterns. We need to find a weakness. Captain, son, he said carefully. We saw what happened to the Carthians. They had better weapons, better shields, better everything. What can we do? Something different, Jinho replied. He opened a channel to the crew. All hands, this is the captain. You all saw what just happened. The Carthian fleet is gone. The council is terrified. They think the Devourers are unbeatable because they can adapt to any weapon. He paused, letting that sink in. But the Devourers have only fought advanced species. They have only seen energy weapons and shields. They have never fought anyone who still uses kinetic weapons. They have never faced nuclear warheads. They have never encountered anyone stupid enough to throw metal slugs at their enemies. A few nervous laughs echoed through the ship's communication system. We are going to show them something they have never seen before, Jinho continued. We are going to show them that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. We are going to show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. Battle stations. We launch in 10 minutes. The Indomitable turned away from its hiding position and accelerated toward the Devourer swarm. On the Council's monitoring station, someone noticed the single blue dot moving to intercept 400 red ones. Vexthor's voice came through, weak and defeated. The human ship is moving forward. Why would they do something so foolish? Admiral Choi responded, and her voice was ice cold. Because someone has to. And because you were wrong about us. In the council chambers, the survivors of dozens of species watched the human ship approach certain death. Some prayed for the brave fools. Others looked away, not wanting to witness another massacre. A few, like Ambassador Hyun, stood with their fists clenched and hope burning in their hearts. The Indomitable flew alone into the darkness, its primitive weapons armed and ready. Behind it, Axiom Prime held billions of lives. Ahead of it, an enemy that had destroyed fleets and civilizations. The odds were impossible. But Captain Jinho Park had been a soldier for 20 years. He knew that impossible just meant no one had succeeded yet. And humanity had built its entire history on doing the impossible. The distance closed. 5 million kilometers, 4 million, 3. Weapons range in 60 seconds, Sunhee reported. All batteries, Jinho ordered. Prepare to fire. The council chamber of Axiom Prime stretched out like a massive arena. Hundreds of alien species sat in curved rows, their seats arranged in a perfect circle around the central platform. Some had scales that shimmered under the bright lights. Others had fur, feathers, or skin that changed colors when they spoke. Captain Jinho Park stood on that platform, hands clasped behind his back, watching them all watch him. He wore his uniform with pride. The dark blue fabric was crisp and clean, decorated with medals that represented 20 years of service to Earth's defense forces. His face remained calm, but inside he felt the weight of every stare. These beings came from civilizations thousands of years older than humanity. They had traveled the stars while humans were still learning to make fire. Admiral Mirai Choi stood beside him, her expression unreadable. She had warned him this would be difficult. The Galactic Council did not welcome newcomers with open arms. They tested them, judged them, and often found them lacking. Humanity had been given provisional membership only 3 months ago, and already some council members wanted to revoke it. Ambassador Hyun Kim sat in the human delegation section, his young face showing traces of nervousness. He held a data tablet that contained all the information about Earth's military capabilities. Information that Jinho knew would not impress anyone here. The holographic display above the platform flickered to life. It showed the Indomitable humanity's flagship warship. The ship looked blocky and utilitarian compared to the sleek vessels of other species. Its hull was thick gray metal covered in sensors and weapon ports. No elegant curves, no shimmering energy fields, just solid engineering and practical design. A sound rippled through the chamber. It took Jinho a moment to realize what it was. Laughter. They were laughing at his ship. Counselor Vexthor rose from his seat. The Carthian was tall and reptilian, with dark green scales and yellow eyes that gleamed with intelligence and superiority. He was the military commander of the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. When he spoke, his voice carried easily across the chamber. "This is what humanity offers for galactic defense?" Vexthor's tone dripped with amusement. "A ship that looks like it was assembled in a scrapyard?" More laughter echoed around them. Jinho felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression neutral. "The Indomitable represents our best technology," Admiral Choi said, her voice steady. "It has served us well in our conflicts within our own solar system." "Conflicts in your own system," Vexthor repeated, and the way he said it made it sound like children fighting over toys. "Tell us about your weapons, Captain Park. What terrible firepower does this vessel possess?" Jinho stepped forward. "We have railguns that fire tungsten projectiles at extremely high velocities. We have missile systems armed with nuclear warheads. We have kinetic bombardment capabilities and—" "Projectiles?" Another counselor interrupted, this one covered in blue fur with 6 arms. "You throw things at your enemies?" "Kinetic weapons have proven very effective in our tests," Jinho said. "Against what?" Vexthor asked. "Asteroids. Your weapons are museum pieces. The galaxy abandoned such primitive technology 3,000 years ago. We use plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, and graviton beams. Our shields can absorb energy from entire stars. And you bring us metal slugs and ancient nuclear devices?" The chamber filled with the sound of agreement. Beings clicked, chirped, hissed, and spoke in hundreds of languages, all saying the same thing. Humanity was backward, primitive, not ready for the galactic stage. Ambassador Hyun looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Even Admiral Choi's calm facade showed small cracks, but Jinho kept standing straight. He had been a soldier too long to be shamed by words. "Our technology may seem outdated," he said, raising his voice to be heard over the mockery. "But it works, it is reliable. It is irrelevant." Vexthor cut him off. "High Commander Zulvax, please share your analysis." Another Carthian stood, this one wearing military armor that seemed to be made of liquid metal. "My tactical division has reviewed human military capabilities. Their ships are slow. Their weapons have limited range compared to energy-based systems. Their defenses rely on thick armor rather than proper shielding. In a combat scenario against any modern military force, they would be eliminated within minutes." "Then what use are they to the Council?" someone called out. "Perhaps they can mine asteroids," another voice suggested, causing fresh waves of laughter. "Or transport cargo," offered a third. Admiral Choi stepped forward, and the authority in her movement made some of the laughter die down. "We did not come here to be insulted. Humanity has overcome incredible challenges. You have survived in your own isolated system," Vexthor said. "That is admirable for a young species. But this is the galactic community. Here, you are children among giants. We have fought wars that lasted centuries. We have defended civilization from threats you cannot imagine. And you offer us chemical propulsion and metal bullets?" He turned to address the full council. "I move that we classify humanity as a non-combat species. They may participate in trade and cultural exchange, but they are not qualified to contribute to galactic defense. All in favor?" The vote was overwhelming. Lights appeared above hundreds of seats, indicating agreement. Only a handful of councilors abstained. None voted against the motion. "The motion passes," declared the council speaker, a being that looked like a floating crystal. "Humanity is hereby classified as non-combat species, effective immediately. Captain Park, your ship will not be integrated into the defense network. Admiral Choi, Earth will be assigned a trade delegation instead of a military liaison. This session is concluded." The holographic display shut off. The Indomitable disappeared from view. Around them, counselors began leaving, many still chuckling, and making jokes about humans throwing rocks in space. Jinho, Mireille, and Hyun walked back to their shuttle in silence. The corridor felt longer than before. When they finally reached the privacy of their transport, Hyun slumped in his seat. "That was humiliating," he said quietly. "That was politics," Admiral Choi corrected, though her voice was tight with anger. Jinho said nothing. He stared out the window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Indomitable waited for him and his crew. Good people who had worked hard to build something they were proud of. He would have to tell them that the galaxy considered their efforts worthless. His communicator beeped, a message from the Indomitable's science officer. Long-range sensors had detected something unusual at the edge of Council space. A large fleet, unknown configuration, moving fast toward Axiom Prime. Jinho read the message twice, then showed it to Admiral Choi. She read it, and her eyes widened slightly. How long until they arrive? 72 hours, Jinho said. They looked at each other, the same thought in both their minds. The galaxy was about to face something new. And very soon, the Galactic Council might wish they had not been so quick to dismiss humanity's metal bullets and nuclear devices. The mockery still echoed in Jinho's memory. But now he felt something else rising inside him. Not anger, not shame, something colder and harder than either. Determination. Let them laugh, he thought. For now, the Indomitable docked at Axiom Prime 3 days after the battle. The ship looked like it had been through a war because it had. Its hull was scarred with plasma burns and impact craters. Several sections were held together with emergency patches and welding. One of the railgun turrets was completely gone, leaving an empty socket in the armor. But it flew with its engines still running and its crew still alive. Captain Jinho Park stood at the airlock watching the docking tube extend from the station. Behind him, his crew waited in formation. They wore their dress uniforms, freshly cleaned despite the damage to the ship. Engineer Doyen Lee had somehow managed to repair the environmental systems enough to provide hot water for showers. Small victories mattered after what they had been through. Commander Sun Hee Han stood beside Jinho, her back straight and her expression proud. Pilot Yuna Shin was there too, along with Dr. Jaewon Nam and Gunnery Sergeant Mina Kang, the survivors of the battle, ready to face whatever came next. The airlock opened. Admiral Mirai Choi entered first, followed by Ambassador Hyun Kim. But behind them came something unexpected. The entire Galactic Council was there. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species, all gathered to meet the humans who had saved them. Counselor Vexthor was among them. The proud Carthian who had mocked humanity's primitive weapons now looked different. Older somehow, humbled. He approached Jinho and did something unprecedented. He bowed. Captain Park, Vexthor said quietly, I owe you and your species an apology. I judged you without understanding. I mocked your weapons without seeing their value. You saved us when we could not save ourselves. Jinho studied the Carthian for a long moment. He could be petty. He could throw the mockery back in Vexthor's face. But that was not who he was. Apology accepted, Counselor. We all make mistakes. The council speaker, the floating crystal being, moved forward. Its voice resonated through the docking bay. The Galactic Council has convened an emergency session. Captain Park, Admiral Choi, you are requested to attend. They walked together through the station's corridors. Everywhere Jinho looked, beings stopped to stare. Some whispered to each other. Others moved aside respectfully. A few actually saluted, though their species had probably never saluted anything in their lives. The council chamber felt different than before. Last time, Jinho had stood on the central platform feeling judged and found wanting. Now, as he took that same position, the atmosphere was completely changed. The counselors watched him with respect, even awe. The council speaker activated the holographic display. It showed battle footage from the fight against the Devourers. Jinho watched himself and his crew fighting against impossible odds. It was strange seeing it from the outside. The Indomitable looked so small against the swarm, but it had held its ground. The Galactic Council acknowledges that our previous judgment was in error, the speaker announced. Humanity was classified as non-combat species based on superficial analysis of technology rather than capability. This was wrong. Vexthor stood. If I may speak? He waited for permission, then continued. I have reviewed the battle data extensively. The human tactics were not just effective. They were brilliant. While we have spent thousands of years perfecting energy weapons and shields, we forgot the fundamental principles of warfare. The humans remembered. He activated a tactical display showing the battle. They used kinetic weapons because energy absorption is worthless against solid matter. They used nuclear weapons because radiation disrupts bioelectric systems. They used shrapnel because you cannot dodge a cloud of projectiles. Every weapon they employed was chosen for maximum effectiveness against the specific enemy. Another counselor, the elderly one who had abstained from the previous vote, spoke up. But more than that, they showed courage. One ship held off 400 until reinforcements arrived. They took casualties, took damage, but never retreated. That is not the behavior of a non-combat species. The council speaker brought up a new document on the holographic display. The council votes on reclassifying humanity as Tier 1 combat species, with full military integration and defensive pact rights. All in favor? Every single counselor voted yes. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement in hundreds of languages. Jinho felt something tight in his chest loosen. They had proved themselves, earned their place through action rather than words. Furthermore, the speaker continued, we established the human combat doctrine as mandatory study in all galactic military academies. The tactics employed by Earth's forces will be analyzed and integrated into Council defense strategies. Admiral Choi stepped forward. The Council honors us. However, humanity has some requests as part of this new classification. Name them, the speaker said. First, we want a mutual defense treaty. If we fight for the galaxy fights for Earth. Second, we want access to galactic technology in exchange for our tactical knowledge. Third, we want Council resources allocated to helping us build more ships. We proved 12 vessels can make a difference. Imagine what 100 could do. The Council debated briefly, but the outcome was obvious. Humanity had saved them. They owed Earth more than they could repay. All requests are granted, the speaker announced. Additionally, Earth will be given a permanent seat on the Security Council and assigned priority status for resource allocation. Vexthor approached Admiral Choi after the official session ended. The Carthian Empire would like to request human military advisors. We need to learn how to think like you do, how to adapt like you do. We can arrange that, Choi replied, but it will not be easy. Human military training is very different from what you are used to. We are prepared to learn. We must learn. The Devourers will return someday, and when they do, we need to be ready. Over the following weeks, everything changed. Construction began on 30 new human warships, funded by the Galactic Council and built with a combination of Earth engineering and alien technology. The designs remained fundamentally human, thick armor and kinetic weapons, but enhanced with better power systems and faster engines. Captain Bowman Yang was assigned to establish a military training facility on a neutral world. Alien officers came to learn human tactics, human thinking, and human stubbornness. The first classes were shocked by how brutal and practical human warfare could be. Ambassador Hyun negotiated trade agreements that would bring Earth into the galactic economy as an equal partner, rather than a junior member. The resources flowing back to Earth would fund education, infrastructure, and research for generations. But the biggest change was in how other species viewed humanity. The jokes stopped. The mockery ended. When humans spoke in council sessions, beings listened. When human ships appeared in a system, pirates and raiders fled. The reputation had been forged in battle and tempered in blood. Jinho stood on the observation deck of the repaired Indomitable, looking out at Axiom Prime. Doyen Lee joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. The engineer had somehow managed to keep the coffee maker working through the entire battle. What are you thinking about, Captain? Doyen asked. I am thinking about how we came here expecting nothing and left with everything, Jinho replied. We proved something important, not just to them, but to ourselves. That we can throw rocks really well, Jinho smiled. That we do not give up. That we fight with everything we have. That being underestimated is not a weakness if you prove them wrong. The intercom beeped. Sunhee's voice came through. Captain, Earth Command is calling. They want to know if we are ready for our next assignment. What assignment? Training mission. We are taking a group of Carthian officers out for field exercises. They want to learn how we do things. Jinho and Doyen exchanged looks. The Carthians who had mocked them now wanted to learn from them. It was almost funny. Tell Earth Command we accept, Jinho said. And tell the Carthians to prepare for a very different kind of training than they are used to. As the Indomitable prepared to leave dock, Jinho took one last look at the council station. They had come here as outsiders, dismissed and ridiculed. They were leaving as defenders of the galaxy, respected and valued. Yuna's voice came through the ship's communication system. All stations report ready for departure, Captain. Take us out, Pilot Shin and Yuna. Yes, Captain? Let us not get shot at for a while. The Indomitable needs time to heal. I will do my best, sir. The ship undocked and turned toward deep space. Its engines flared bright blue as it accelerated away from Axiom Prime. The scars on its hull caught the light from the system's star, visible reminders of what it had endured. In the council chambers, beings watched the human ship depart. They would not forget what humanity had done, how one species, armed with outdated weapons and impossible courage, had stood between civilization and annihilation. They had laughed at first, called the humans primitive, mocked their metal slugs and nuclear fire, but they were not laughing anymore. Now they understood what Jinho and his crew had known all along. Humanity did not need the most advanced weapons. They needed the will to use whatever weapons they had with maximum effectiveness. They needed the courage to stand when others ran. They needed the stubbornness to keep fighting when logic said they should surrender. Those traits, more than any technology, made them dangerous, made them valuable, made them equals.